Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2020-21 season. The Game Week 3 content is underway and I thought we'd kick it off. This week's content with a little episode of Buy, Sell, Keep, Avoid. Now, the last episode of this video was my most viewed ever video, my most liked ever video, and the response was just so amazing. So if I can get anywhere near the amount of support I got on the last one as I do on this one, I will be absolutely overwhelmed. So please do keep those likes coming in. Please do keep those subscriptions coming in. Keep on subscribing to the channel. But yeah, let me quickly explain to you just how this Buy, Sell, Keep, Avoid series works. So we are talking about players we want to buy. So players that you probably don't have, but you should consider bringing in. Players you should sell. Players that you probably have, but should consider removing from your teams. Keep, which is players that you probably have and should keep. And then finally, avoid. Players that you probably don't have, but you should probably avoid them. So yeah, split up into 4 categories just like that. And the idea is what we want to do is we want to pick out some players that are going to be really good for our teams going forward. Perhaps not everyone has thought to bring in certain players. We're going to look at bandwagons. Which bandwagons do we want to get on? Which bandwagons do we want to avoid completely? When is the right time to release a player from your team? When is the right time to bring in a player into your team? Because we want to get ahead of the points here. We want to get ahead of the curve. We don't want to buy a player who's been scoring well for weeks and weeks and weeks because everyone's already got the points. We need to get in there nice and early, and that's how we get ahead on points. So I hope that makes sense. Let's run through last week's buy, sells, keeps and avoids quickly, just so you can get a better idea. So last week I told you to buy Rodriguez and Bruno. We won't go through all of them, but I want to say about Bruno. Bruno was the only one out of the buys and the keeps that didn't blank. All of the others scored at least one return. So Rodriguez, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Aubameyang, all of the buys and the keeps did well. So we're happy with that, other than Bruno, which is sort of a long-term pick anyway. And then the sells and avoids, all of them blanked. So far, I've got everyone right but one, I suppose. But even then, you know, Bruno, how can anyone predict that? And I do think he's still a good long-term pick. So if you did buy him, I don't think there's anything to worry about just yet. But let's move on to this week's buys, sells, keeps and avoids. So let's start off with buys. Kevin De Bruyne. I think the most obvious buy now, having watched Man City, is KDB. It's easy to forget just how good this man is. And before watching this game, I was actually leaning towards Sterling. The thing that swung it for me is that it looks like KDB will be playing in an advanced number 10 role now that David Silva has left the club. This will mean that he's going to have far more freedom to be creative in attack with more two defensive players playing behind him. This is going to make him a fantastic captain pick pretty much every single week. And with Foden looking like he's going to play on the wing and David Silva gone, not only does this mean KDB will have less backup in his position, if you like, and will play more games. You know, he's pretty much nailed on anyway. But with the addition of Ferran Torres and Mahrez to come back, it looks like there's going to be even more competition on the wing, which could compete with Sterling a little bit. Sterling perhaps not getting quite as much game time. Sterling is still a fantastic pick, and I think there is an argument to have both. But with all the above, and the fact that KDB is on penalties, I think he has to be prioritised as a sensible transfer. KDB has come straight in against a tough walls of opposition, and he scored 13 points, for God's sake. He also looks statistically a lot better as well. So 4 shots, all on target, 2 shots in the box, 2 big chances, 6 key passes, and even his non-penalty XG, his expected goals, was 0.73, which is just an absolutely amazing start for KDB from a statistical point of view. Man City also look just lively, hungry. You know, they want to win the Premier League once more, which is really, really positive to see. And KDB is going to be the centrepiece in this title-challenging City side because of his ownership. He's also really dangerous not to own because quite a lot of people are going in for De Bruyne. And I think the only thing that swings it in Sterling's favour perhaps is the fact that KDB has already had a 0.1 price rise, so you might have been priced out of KDB already. But honestly, I would rather go in on KDB now than go for Sterling just before KDB rises anymore, because there is a chance that he might rise even more in price. So he will be probably the priority transfer in. But my second buy is Daniel Podence. Now that Jota has left and gone to Liverpool, and Adamer's now playing in a deeper role on the right wing back. This makes Podence the first winger on the team sheet, really. He looked really impressive at the end of last season, and he's continued that form into this season, sort of grabbing an assist in each of his first 2 games, which is really quite nice, isn't it? But more than that, what I like about Podence is he sort of looks the part, doesn't he? You know when you have a player in your team and they actually look like a great player, it's exciting to have them in your fantasy team, and you can just sort of sit back and watch them and think, wow, we've got quite a player there, haven't we? And I think that's what Podence is. I think he is a really good player, and I have been sort of waiting in a way for him to start getting regular minutes to get nailed on. Now he's got a little bit less competition. He can become a regular starter, and now we can actually consider bringing him in. I mean, he has had that talent there already. It was just always that it was a bit of a rotation risk, which he's not anymore. So yeah, the key thing we can see with Podence is his creativity. Yeah, so in 2 games he's had 3 successful crosses in those 2 games, 2 corners that he's taken, 3 key passes, 2 big chances created, and an expected assists of 0.87. I think his X goals and assists, his X goal involvement, is over 1 actually, or at least around 1, which is not, obviously it's not quite at KDB level, but he's literally less than half the price, so you sort of have to manage your expectations a little bit. Podence also has the advantage of having a fantastic striker in Jimenez to pass to, and another huge plus is his next fixtures. Okay guys, check out Podence's next fixtures. They're good. So West Ham away, Fulham at home, Leeds away, Newcastle at home, and then Palace at home. Even then, after that, they've got Leicester and Southampton. So depending on how things go, that could be a really, really, really nice run of fixtures, even for the next 7. But the biggest bonus of all, and the reason why I think it's really worthwhile mentioning Daniel Podence in this video, is because at 5.5 million, he's the perfect replacement for Allan Saint-Maximin. Allan Saint-Maximin obviously picked up a minor injury. I'm not sure if he's going to be back in time for Gameweek 3. Even if he is, he's not quite been fulfilling the expectations that we had of him, when Daniel Podence very much has been fulfilling, beating his expectations for a 5.5 million midfielder. So I think Podence is definitely the best midfield option at 5.5 million or less, and there is arguments to say that he is the best midfielder at 6 million or less, despite the fact that he's at 5.5 million. So he really is that good, and I really do back Podence. And, he's only on 2.3% ownership as well at the time I'm recording this video. So this transfer is just a great way to get ahead of the curve before sort of the wider player base has discovered Podence. We can sort of go in on him quite nice and early. So yeah, I do recommend that buy as well. So let's move on to selves, and we're going to start off with Willian. So for those of you who watched last week's video, last week's buy, sell, keep, avoid anyway, you'll know that Willian was a firm avoid for me. I said he's likely to get rotated. He's got terrible fixtures after the West Ham game. Well, it's now after the West Ham game, isn't it? And Arsenal have horrible fixtures for the next couple of months. Willian is surely going to be rotated with Saka and Pepe, and he had a little bit of a disappointed second game, to be honest. And yet so many people brought Willian into their teams to the point that he's now 15% owned, and he's quickly, he's just he was just never a good bandwagon to join in the first place. And I think if you did get on it, then it's time to get off. And I think we can be positive. What's done is done. There's no point dwelling on the past in FPL, and we should always look to make positive transfers, shouldn't we? So the positives I would say is around 8 million, which Willian is. There are a lot of options. You've got a lot of options. So if you've got a little bit of money in the bank, you could potentially upgrade to a Son or a Bruno, depending on obviously how much money you've got in the bank. But more importantly, there's some really, really nice downgrades you can move to that can help you, and you can use that money elsewhere as well. So you can go for James Rodriguez, you can go for Zaha, potentially Harvey Barnes as well. So yeah, Willian is not just a sell because he's a bad FPL pick, but also because there are many excellent escape routes available to you. So if you do have Willian, try and be positive about it. You've got an easy and positive transfer to make, and you got this. So let's make the move. And let's make positive transfers. So next up, I've got Egan. He's my second sell, and I think Egan is probably a little bit more obvious. I don't think anyone's going to argue with this one. He's already the most sold player of the game week, and sort of for good reason, really. So he had 0 points in his first game, minus 2 points in his second game, and he's got a 1-match ban, so you can't play him in Game Week 3 anyway. But if you guys watch this channel often, you'll know that I don't ever make decisions purely on points scored in the past, but rather how many points I think they'll score moving forward. And for Egan, even discounting how many points he's got so far, I think it does look bleak. I said before the season, even started, I said that Sheffield United perhaps going to have a bit of second season syndrome, and their defensive tactics might get found out a little bit because they are a system team, and individually their players aren't that amazing. Plus Henderson, of course, was a really big plus for them. Now they've got Ramsdale, which perhaps is not going to work out quite as well. So for that reason, I never really liked them from an FPL perspective going into this season. And the first 2 games have sort of reinforced that and given me more confidence in that initial opinion. I thought maybe I prejudged them, but actually it turns out so far that, yeah, perhaps they're not going to have such a great second season. In general, Sheffield United are kind of a sell/avoid team at this present moment. Just as they haven't really started well, and they've got very tough fixtures coming up as well. Egan in particular, as the most popular Sheffield player, he has to go really. A 5 million defender right now is pretty big investment considering most of us are going for 4.5 million defenders. So in a way, your 5 million defender is like your second premium defender in a sense, in which case you probably want to use the money quite wisely and go for someone like Reece James, who looks really positive and potentially nailed at Chelsea as well now, or Saiss with Wolves' great fixtures coming up, and there's obviously a little bit of goal threat there on set pieces for Saiss. So again, it's a case of there being some great transfer options to you for you to go and switch to, as well as you being able to offload a deadweight player that you perhaps don't want. So let's move on to the keeps, and the keeps and avoids are always a little bit more controversial because they don't always seem logical at first. But my first keep is Bruno Fernandes. Now, there's always going to be that knee-jerk voice in your head saying, Bruno Fernandes cost me 10.5 million and he only got me 2 points, whereas Son got 24 points last game week for cheaper money. Let's make the switch. Let's go Bruno to Son. But things don't work like that, and sort of chasing points from an individual game week never really works. If you're chasing points, from like 10 game weeks prior, or 5 game weeks prior, or even 3 game weeks prior, they're like consistent good scores, fair enough. But from one game week, Son having one good game week, Bruno having one bad game week, that's knee jerk. You can't make a decision just on that. So judging players like Fernandes or Son negatively or positively over one game week is usually a mistake. Now, we saw that last week with Trent Alexander-Arnold. Last week he got 1 point, so people switched them over to Digne, Robertson and sort of Van Dijk. And this week, Alexander-Arnold outscored them all. We also saw it with Mane. So many people switched from Salah to Mane because 1 week, Salah scored all of these points and everyone's like, oh my God, we've got to get rid of Mane. He blanked and bring in Salah. But in game week 2, Salah blanked and Mane hauled. So my point is, don't judge a player so quickly, especially when they have a proven record of quality behind them. Bruno was amazing last season, literally the most points per game of any player in FPL. Just because his first game back wasn't great doesn't mean you should immediately sell him. Have a little bit of patience. I genuinely believe that over the next 10 games, Bruno will outscore Son. And maybe I'm wrong, but even if I am, is there really going to be that much in it? You should use your transfers on swapping players that will genuinely really, really improve your team, not sort of marginally improve it by a couple of points. Try and make really, really positive and decisive and dynamic transfers that are going to revolutionise your team in every instance. So yeah, Bruno to Son doesn't accomplish that. Bruno to Rashford doesn't accomplish that. I don't know who else you're thinking of switching Bruno to if you are thinking of taking Bruno out. Potentially KDB. I think if it was KDB, that would be the only player I would say that you could potentially mount an argument to swap Bruno out for. But that would be my only one. Other than that, just keep faith in Bruno and see what happens. He's without a doubt, in my mind, a player that you should keep and not knee-jerk out after one week. Last season, he proved he can be FPL royalty. So let's give him more than one measly game week to prove it again, eh? My second keep is Timo Werner. This is another bad outgoing transfer bandwagon I want to warn you about and warn you against, I guess. So many people are selling Werner. I mean, I think he's due a price drop. He might drop in price literally tonight down to 9.5 million, which is just ridiculous. I mean, he looks okay in his first couple of games in the Premier League, but people are selling him because he only picked up 5 points in his first ever game and then only 2 points against the champions of England whilst his team was down to 10 men. It seems a little bit harsh. And it's sort of important to look at the context. But those are not even my main points. My main point is, and the reason I would never sell Werner in this very particular game week is because Chelsea are about to play against West Brom. West Brom conceded 8 goals in the last 2 matches against Leicester and Everton. Just imagine how many goals they could concede against a team with all the attacking strengths of Chelsea, especially with more of Chelsea's players now returning to fixtures. Werner is sort of the main guy to grab goals for Chelsea, or you would think long term he's going to be. And if Vardy can get 2, Calvert-Lewin can get 3, surely Werner can grab a couple as well. Now, I'm not saying that Werner is an essential pick. Far from that. But this game week, leading into game week 3, this is just definitely not the time to sell him. On paper, he should be one of the top scoring players of this game week, really, of game week 3, and he's a genuine captain option as well. I can't see a single player that's sort of worth getting in for Werner this particular game week, and I guarantee there's a transfer you can make in your team right now that will be more effective than the one that ships Werner out. So forget about shipping Werner out, concentrate on other areas of your team, because Werner versus West Brom, there could be a real treat there for owners. But yeah, I do want to reiterate that I'm not the players I've considered keeps are not necessarily buys, but if you do have them, keep them, kind of thing. But yeah, let's move on to the avoids anyway. So my first avoid is Tyrick Mitchell. So I think this is a bad bandwagon of trends people are going in to buy Tyrick Mitchell, and I don't think that's a particularly good idea. And I want to say Tyrick Mitchell has played fantastically. I think he's a really, really good player there, but he's definitely not a player you should be bringing into your team right now, and here's why. So Mitchell is the backup left back for Crystal Palace, who is currently replacing Patrick Van Aanholt, who is has been injured. And whilst he's played well, it's pretty safe to assume that when Van Aanholt is back to fitness, he'll come straight back into the team, and leaving Mitchell firmly back on the bench and getting very, very few points, if any, to be honest. Van Aanholt is already back in training. He has been for a while. He's running. Roy Hodgson seems to be positive about Van Aanholt as well. So, I mean, this tells us that, maybe Van Aanholt comes back in a couple of weeks. Maybe he comes back in game week 5. And this immediately tells us that Mitchell, therefore, is not a good long-term pick. So he's going to be shipped. He's going to have to be shipped out at some point anyway. He's only going to be valid for a couple of game weeks. But in those couple of game weeks in which he is valid, Palace play against an in-form Everton team, and then they play a full-strength, or what will be at that point, a full-strength Chelsea team. Now, do you back a defender against those two oppositions? Probably not. So even in the short term, he doesn't actually look that great. But the final plus side that a lot of people were saying is, well, I mean, Mitchell's only 4.1 million, and you can spend the remainder of the money of that cash elsewhere. Now, that's all well and good if you have players on your bench to replace Mitchell in a couple of game weeks when he stops playing. But if you don't, all you're going to have to do is later downgrade one of your starting 11 to upgrade this 4.1 defender just to field a starting 11, which wastes 2 transfers in the process, and you're perhaps having to sacrifice another player that you perhaps quite like to keep. So overall, buying Mitchell is just not a good idea. It will bring you a few points, if any, in the short term. It will leave you with a major squad problem in the long term, and I don't know, it just doesn't seem like a good idea. And 22.3% of players already own him, and there's just more and more flooding in as well. I just wanted to recommend that you don't join that 22% of people and use your transfers elsewhere. Grab another player. And my final avoid, I'm going to have to go for Gabriel for a second week in a row. Now, I wanted to put Jorginho in, really, because still so many people are transferring in Jorginho, despite the fact that he's a central defensive midfielder who's likely to be the first guy out of the first 11, dropped from the Chelsea team when Ziyech, Pulisic come back into the team when they return to fitness. But on sheer numbers alone, FPL managers are actually bringing in Gabriel in their droves. There is so many people bringing in Gabriel. I guess they're trying to chase the big haul that Gabriel got in game week 1. And I'm also guessing because it's something to do with Egan, because Egan is suspended, that they need a replacement for around 5 million. Maybe they've gone for Gabriel as their answer. But as I said earlier, if you want a defender in that price region, go for Reece James or Romain Saiss, who are both better options. Yes, Gabriel looked good in his first couple of games, but it's sort of exactly as I said last week. With centre-backs, you can't depend on goals. The goals that centre-backs score, obviously they're coming from set pieces, corners and free kicks, and they will happen seemingly at random, no matter who they're playing. So you need to really look at clean sheets for central defenders. And for Gabriel, his next 5 fixtures: Liverpool, Sheffield United, Man City, Leicester, Manchester United. How many clean sheets do you genuinely think that Gabriel will get in those 5 games? 1, maybe 2 if you're very lucky. And, he's going to pick up a load of minus points as well for goals conceded. So I think it's just best to leave him out for now. I think, he could end up being a great option in the future. But for now, he's my final avoid of this video. final player of this video, and the first player this season, of course, to feature in the same category twice. And in a row as well. So, yes, those are all my buys, my sells, my keeps, and my avoids. I hope you found this video useful. I'm sorry it was a little bit longer, but, you know, I had a lot to say. I'll try and keep it a little bit shorter next time. If you did enjoy this video, you did find it useful, please do consider subscribing. I don't know what my subscriber aim should be anymore because it's just gone mad. Yeah, I'm loving every second of it. So thank you so much, guys, for all of your support. Please do, as I say, subscribe. Like the video if you found it helpful. If you want to check me out on Twitter, Instagram, join my mini league or support me on Patreon, all of the links are in the description right now. So go click on that. And that's just about it. So thank you so much for watching, guys. And I'll see you tomorrow for a team selection video. Thanks for watching, guys. See you later, mates. Bye-bye.